Growing up, I was always a night owl. Staying up late, playing video games, and drawing was my thing, and with the advent of social media, I feel like the whole world is telling you to just rush. And for a while, I listened to the noise. For a while, I was the person trying desperately to wake up at 5:30, only to go to bed a little bit too late and wake up the next morning only having slept 5 hours. Which isn't that bad, but when you take that 5 hours of sleep and spread it over every day of the week with work, job, hobbies, family, eventually it gets to you. Eventually you burn out. What I realize now that I've stopped waking up early is that I am in just so much less of a rush. Naturally, I'm a night owl, and waking up early had me feeling like I was always competing against the clock. I was always running out of time. This nagging feeling that I always needed to be somewhere by this or that time, that I was always late. Artistically, that caused my art to often feel rushed, and that I was always late finishing a piece that had no real deadline, and that it was never good enough. I was always just stuck in this time loop, constant internal pressure. The clock was always ticking. There's a lot to unpack there, but for this video we're going to stick to creativity and how it ebbs and flows throughout the day in relation to time. While I do have a creative peak in the morning, I also have one deep in the evening. And I think as artists, it's important to realize that for ourselves. When are you most creative? If you've never thought about it before, if you know how to listen to yourself well enough, I guarantee you'll know. And if you don't know, then my advice is to experiment with your schedule. Ask yourself when you find yourself getting hit by inspiration, the need to make something, the need to do something with your hands, or the need to even fixate. Unfortunately for some of us, work and life do get in the way of these creative peaks. All I can say as advice for this is do your best to have your lifestyle and work life serve your creativity as much as you can, of course, within reason. If you can't, then I'm going to give you some tips on how to be creative on demand, because equally important to knowing when you are most creative is also knowing how to create at any moment. And across the board, all 4 of these upcoming tips are very personal to the individual, so I highly suggest you look inward and find out what works best. Your mileage may vary. Managing your creative battery is huge and probably the most individually specific and also important tip on this list. Your creative battery or capacity and your management of it is very important, especially if you work a creative job like me. So what is your creative battery? I define it as the total capacity you have to be creative throughout any given day. We all have different sizes of this battery, and it is something that can be worked like a muscle to get stronger or last longer. The more you are creative or push yourself to be creative, the bigger your battery can get. But be careful, listen to yourself, as this can also lead to burnout, and you can also obviously plateau. It's very similar to working out a muscle. Ever had art block? Yeah, me too. So how do you actually manage it? The best advice I can give is pay attention to what drains you physically and mentally, and what fills you up creatively. Be mindful they may not be what you expect. What seems like a restful activity may actually drain your creativity. For example, I find that staring at my phone or playing video games drains me creatively, but going out on a run fills me back up. What I'm getting at here is your creative battery is sort of separate from your physical energy and even your mental energy, kind of. Obviously, they're all kind of tied together here in some ways. If you're tired, you're just tired, right? But I would say, since this tip or section is so individual and broad, to end this section, I'm just going to kind of give you some general lifestyle tips I found that work for me to help you manage your battery. But overall, just pay attention to what works for you, and I encourage you to experiment with your schedule if it feels like it's not serving you. And I mean, you can go crazy, try waking up at 3:30 in the morning, do whatever you feel like you want to try. If nothing seems like it's working, don't be afraid to get extreme, as long as it obviously doesn't totally disrupt your life. But the first thing, little disclaimer here and lifestyle tip, is get enough sleep and eat healthy. To be honest, if you can't do this, don't even bother with anything else. Fix this first. The sleep most primarily. Sleep is super important to creativity. The difference I feel from getting 5 hours of sleep to getting even 6 to 8 a night now is tremendously different. My mood's better, everything. Life feels like it's more together. I would say it's the most important thing within this section, right? And another tip that I like to do is I use physical activity to recharge creative energy. Sometimes your brain needs a rest and your body doesn't. If you feel like you can't create, go for a walk, run, go lift weights, whatever you like to do. I find that physical activity rests my brain and mental activity rests my body. So see if that applies to you as well. If you work a creative job, find methods through processes to make things more predictable and less creative. The goal is that your creativity is targeted. The more you have to guess when you're making things or being creative, the more the battery will drain. Sometimes that's okay. If you want to let that happen, but the key here is just to be intentional. Really, intentionality is the really big key here for managing your creative battery. Be specific on what you spend your energy on in regards to that, right? And lastly, have grace for yourself. With all these tips, You can be doing all the right things and your battery could still be drained, or you just might be blocked, or you might just be, freaking tired. Rest, take a break, and come back tomorrow. Most content online tells you to draw or make art every day. I don't, and you shouldn't either if it doesn't serve you. If you feel like you are and you're getting somewhere, that's great, keep doing it. But if you do feel yourself getting tired, or one day you just don't freaking want to, don't, right? If this is something you're really trying to chase and go for in life, my general rule with training for things, right, whether it's fitness or art, is if you're tired one day, try and push through, and the next day, if you're still tired, then just don't, take a break then, right? Because sometimes it is, resistance and other internal factors that aren't actually you being tired. Sometimes it is, you just kind of being lazy, but that's kind of my tell, is if I'm tired the next day, then it's like, okay, I need some time, I need to take a break. Inspiration is very important. How can you make art if you don't enjoy it? Go watch movies, shows, go to art galleries, listen to music, immerse yourself in the creativity of others. Also study it. Watch how others work, see the behind the scenes of films, watch, people draw online, whether it's me or other people. Some of my favorites are Peter Hahn and Daniel Warren Johnson. Daniel Warren Johnson does a stream every Friday, or just about, where he draws and works on comics and stuff. These types of things, watching people work, really opens your eyes to the possibilities, and even opens yourself to schedules and, all the ins and outs of how people's processes work. And my advice with that is, take what works and leave what doesn't for yourself. There's always going to be someone better than you out there that you can go watch work, go find them and learn. One of the great things about social media actually is that these types of things are so easily accessible. I'm not talking about, art hacks or shortcuts or even speed drawings like I'm doing in this video. I'm talking about the long form stuff where you can kind of see the slowness and deliberate nature of people making things, right? It may open your eyes to a new technique or a new way of doing things altogether, like I said, but more important with all that is pay attention to how you're feeling when you're consuming it. No one on YouTube can really teach you how to do this yourself, but you need to figure out how you feel things and why you feel things. Why does, this is kind of a ridiculous example, but why does, the scene in Blade Runner where the rain's falling, why does that make you feel sad instead of melancholy, right? And those are very similar emotions, but there is nuance there, that you need to become privy to or try to, right? And no one's going to have a fully articulate set of feelings and emotions like that, right? But the more you can push in that direction, the more you'll kind of understand your art and understand how to evoke emotions on the page, right? That's all. That's very woo-woo sounding, but I promise the deeper you get into it and your feelings, the more you'll just feel life and art speak to you. And also, just from a more practical sense, it'll help you have essentially a tool bag to create more efficiently. You can say, I remember how this person did this, I can apply that here, so on and so forth. Do you have a dedicated space where you can create? Do you have a studio or even a corner of an office like me? And, mind you, not everyone needs this or will have access to it. Some weirdos actually create better in public. I could never do that. It sounds exhausting, but I personally need somewhere where I can exclusively be creative and kind of get away with minimal distractions or very targeted distractions, a place where I can sit down and roughly speaking, there's only one thing I can do, right? A big part of this, having the space, is keeping it organized, or at least organized in a way that serves you. This could very well be, markers or paint tubes laying everywhere, if that's how your brain works. For me, things are semi-organized. I would say somewhere between stuff laying everywhere on a day-to-day basis and some stuff being put away. It's kind of I'm a little bit more on the chaotic side though. I pretty much keep only tools and things I use on the regular out. Otherwise I'll get kind of decision paralysis of what I want to do or use in the evening. So I have about 3 regular pens and 2 regular, I would say, color mediums right now I'm working in, at least traditionally. I'm a big gamer, and something I did recently is separate my gaming stuff out of the office into a different room, at least for the most part. This helps me kind of, like I was saying, compartmentalize my activities into dedicated spaces. When I'm in this room now where I'm recording, all I'm doing is making things, and when I'm out kind of in the other room, I'm relaxing and gaming. If you have the option, I highly recommend you do this. It'll also helps separate work from relaxation. If you're not as compartmentalized as me, that's okay. Just like I said earlier, mileage may vary. Find out what works for you. But maybe one half of your desk is for one thing if you don't have a lot of space, and the other half is for another. Or separate activities even by time, right? Set a timer, and once it goes off, use it as an audible switch to go into creative mode. The Pomodoro method is a thing for a reason. Lastly, last tip here is sometimes you gotta do it! Oftentimes this feeling like you don't have time is more about just sitting down and drawing or making the time. If creativity and drawing is really such a priority to you and such a, something that matters a lot to you, either as a path to a future career, a life passion, or maybe both, then it's important enough to carve out time for it, right? Just sit down and do it. Oftentimes the biggest hurdle to making art is just starting, I made a video, back when I was working on the comic, and it's true, like the hardest, and plenty of other people have said it too, I'm definitely not the first, like the hardest thing to do is just start. The hardest thing on a weight loss journey is just start. The hardest thing on eating better, just start. Once you get the habit rolling, you generally speaking, you're good. There's a great book for that, by the way, called Atomic Habits, that I highly recommend if you haven't read it. But at the same time of all of this just do it mentality, art takes time, or at least it can. Different people work at different speeds. Some people spend months on a painting. I couldn't imagine. I'm more of like the get things done in a week or two type of person. That's why making comics is kind of challenging for me, is I like to see the immediate result. But also, I'm also a kind of slow artist. I like to sit on one piece sometimes for multiple weeks. Sometimes I can get into a really fixated mode where I could draw for like 4 to 8 hours. Most of the time it's like 30 minutes at a time, an hour or two, maybe 3, here and there throughout the week. Some weeks I work on something once, like for 30 minutes, and then other weeks I'll work like 4 days out of the week for maybe an hour each day. It totally varies. But the key here is you don't have to do it all at once. For YouTube now, even, I really only at this point work on these videos on the weekends. I'll edit and do VO sometimes during the week, but most of the time it's just I don't feel like it. I'd rather be drawing or relaxing, playing video games, whatever. And usually I'm just tired from editing all day at work. However, when I do work for these shorter amount of time sessions, the art sessions are almost always, I would say, either very deep focused, or where high quality, like really into it, or they're not at all, right? I'm just kind of sketching, doodling. I'm kind of just getting the muscle memory still fresh, drawing heads of characters, which is something I love to do when I can't think of anything else to draw. But working this way, I feel like get things done to a higher quality, and probably even more things done than I would in a longer block of time, because I burn out very easily. So if I were kind of working even how I was before when I first started this channel, I could work on art and projects and stuff every week, but by the end of about the month, I'd be toasted and I'd have to take a month break pretty much. Something kind of to mention here too is even when I'm not physically drawing or making YouTube videos, a lot of the time I'm thinking about them, which, to the outside world probably looks like I'm doing nothing. But what this means is breaking down things I see in the world into simple shapes in my brain for drawing, thinking about what the next video is about at work. Maybe I'll take a note here or there of the core of the video, or even a feeling. Doing this is important too, right? Mentally drawing even when you're not drawing kind of just, like I said, keeps you active and keeps you engaged in the process. And this doesn't fully obviously replace the time spent actually sat down doing the thing, but I found it does help my brain kind of build up and kind of slow charge the creative battery for when I do actually go down to sit down, or for when I do actually go to sit down to draw or write. In fact, to wrap this whole video up, the best piece of advice I can give you is really simple, and it's 2 things. Learn who you are and how you work, and second, love yourself enough to make the time, put in the work, and also to rest when you need it.